Hey, welcome to On This Day. I gotta tell you, I appreciate you stopping by. Today is February 27th. It is the 58th day of the year. There are only 308 days left in 2020. This is the 9th Thursday of the year. Today is the second day of Lent. I would have brought it up yesterday, but we didn't do a video. It is a Christian holiday beginning on Ash Wednesday. Lent is a season of reflection and preparation before the celebration of Easter. There's a lot more to it, and it lasts 40 days. When I was in elementary school at a Catholic school, we had to stand up in class and tell everyone what we were giving up for Lent. I think I was in 6th grade when I proudly announced for the next 40 days I would ignore all things Lent related. I thought it was funny, my classmates thought it was funny. Sister Veronica Jean had a different take on it. I have never seen a nun move that fast. She shook me like a maraca. Besides getting assaulted by a 6'2" penguin, let's see what else happened on this date. 1860, Abraham Lincoln makes a speech at Cooper Union in New York City that is largely responsible for his election to the presidency. In the speech, Lincoln went on to say that he didn't want the practice of slavery expanding to the western states. In the speech, he claimed the founding fathers would agree with his position, which a lot of people agreed with him. Side note, legend has it that President Lincoln was staying at the Wayne Hotel in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, when they convinced him to run for the presidency. I guess they had a meeting there and he said, okay, I'll do it. 1939, the Supreme Court rules that sit-down strikes violate property owners' rights and therefore are illegal. The sit-down strike was the inspiration for the sit-ins that they had in the 60s and stuff like that. I guess they still have them to this day. Anyway, it's where an organized group of protesters would occupy an area in which they're not wanted by sitting and refusing to leave until their demands are met. This has worked very few times. 1943, in Berlin, the Gestapo arrests 1,800 Jewish men with German wives, leading to a protest, as you can imagine. It was a collective street protest on Rose Street in Berlin. This demonstration was initiated and sustained by non-Jewish wives and relatives of Jewish men who had been arrested and targeted for deportation. The protest continued until the men being held were actually released, so there's a protest that worked. 1951, the 22nd Amendment to the United States Constitution is enacted. This sets a limit on the number of times an individual is eligible for election to the office of President of the United States. Prior to the ratification of this amendment, the presidents had not been subject to any term limits, but George Washington had established a 2-term tradition and many of the presidents followed. This all changed in 1940. I guess that was the beginning of the change. In the 1944 presidential election, Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the first president to win a 3rd term, and later a 4th term, giving rise to the concerns about the potential issue involved with the president serving unlimited number of terms, sort of becoming a king in a way. You know, that BS we left Europe for? 1964, the government of Italy asked help to keep the Leaning Tower of Pisa from toppling over. The tower began leaning during the construction in the 12th century due to the soft ground, which couldn't properly support the structure's weight, and it only worsened with time. By 1990, the tower had reached a 5.5 degree tilt. After some work between 1993 and 2001, this reduced the lean to about 3.97 degrees, which now they figure is stable. Now, you are able to go into the tower. You got to buy a ticket. You go, check out the inside. But most people just sit outside and take lame pictures like millions of other people have where they're pretending to hold up the tower. It's just dumb. When someone's done something a million times before you just don't do it. Or at least be creative about it. 1973, the American Indian Movement occupies Wounded Knee in protest of the federal government. The AIM was initially formed in urban areas to address systematic issues of poverty and police brutality against Native Americans. 1991, during the Gulf War, President George H.W. Bush announces that Kuwait is liberated. That same day, the Highway of Death happened. Now, if you remember this, or if you don't remember it, I'm going to tell you about it. When the Iraqi army realized they'd bit off more than they could chew, they decided to take everything they could that wasn't bolted down in Kuwait and flee back to Iraq, including art, gold, any valuables, medical equipment, weapons, and they took some people with them too. They loaded up anything that had gas and headed down this long desert road. They, I guess, thought they had accomplished something because people said they were blasting music and very celebratory as they left Kuwait. They were having a great time. They had stolen so many vehicles, it created a traffic jam for miles and miles. Everyone hates a traffic jam, especially these dudes, because on the 26th and 27th of February 1991, the U.S. bombers caught up with them, and it got bad. They were just sitting ducks, just lined up on the highway. Men ran out into the desert, and I don't think they, survived because I'm sure the helicopters came soon after the bombers. 2010, an earthquake measuring 8.8 magnitude strikes central parts of Chile, killing over 500 people and injuring thousands. The quake triggers a tsunami that struck Hawaii shortly after. Born on February 27, 1899, Charles Herbert Best, American-Canadian biochemist. He co-discovered insulin. Decades later, American insurance companies realized they could make a mint by jacking up the price on something people need to live. 1980, Chelsea Clinton is born. American journalist and academic, they say. She's the first daughter of President Bill Clinton. 1983, Kate Mara is born. She's an American actress. I loved her in We Are Marshall and House of Cards. Great actress. I don't know why she doesn't get starring roles all the time. Baffles me. Died on February 27th, 1892. Louis Vuitton, French fashion designer and businessman, founder of Louis Vuitton French fashion house and luxury retail brand. Vuitton died at the age of 70 due to natural causes. Like I said, in 1892, shows you how much I know about high-end fashion. I thought the dude was still alive. I had no idea he was making his company back in the 1850s. I thought maybe the 60s or 70s. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Anyway, 2003, we lost an American treasure, Fred Rogers, television host, and like I said, American treasure. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, also known as The Neighborhood, was a half-hour educational children's program starring Rogers. It began airing in 1968 and ran for 895 episodes. The final episode was in 2001. If you haven't seen the movie Mr. Rogers with Tom Hanks, I strongly recommend it. It's a great movie. I've read a few things about Mr. Rogers over the years. It wasn't abnormal for the man to show up at a child's hospital room and stay for an hour. He just wasn't there to go say hi, and, hit a bunch of beds and leave for a photo op or anything like that. He just did it on his own. He would just show up unannounced. He heard one of the kids that watch his show may have been in the hospital. He was in the neighborhood. He'd just show up with his puppets and hang out and talk. One of the writers from Rolling Stone magazine tells a story about how he saw Mr. Rogers on an elevator in Chicago some years back. This was right after he lost his grandmother. He mentioned this to Mr. Rogers on the elevator ride, and Fred Rogers said, "Why don't you sit on the bench here and we'll talk about it?" And they sat there, and he asked him to tell him about his grandmother. So he sat there for at least 30 minutes to an hour and just listened. And at the end, he said, "I'm sorry, I'm sure you had other places to be." And Mr. Rogers' only reply was, "It sounds like this is where I needed to be." He was just a good man. 2015, we lost Leonard Nimoy, American actor and the beloved Mr. Spock from Star Trek. In February of 2014, Nimoy revealed publicly that he had been diagnosed with COPD, a condition he attributed to a smoking addiction he had given up over 30 years earlier. Which that sucks. You give something up and it still kills you. His first professional acting role was in 1951, and his final role was a cameo in a Star Trek movie in 2013. It was the movie Into Darkness. Alright, so that's today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Don't forget to like, comment, share this if you want, subscribe if you haven't and you'd like to. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.